Welcome to this episode of Bounded in a Nutshell. Remember to take a moment to click on the link below to donate to a very special organization. Figure Skating in Harlem is the first organization in the world to combine the power of education with the grace and discipline of figure skating. It is dedicated to developing confidence, leadership, and academic achievement in young girls from low-income backgrounds. The numerous stories of success from its alumni owe a great deal to the unique blend of mentoring and self-expression that is championed by FSH. Remember, no donation is too small or too large to keep the dream alive for these exceptional young girls. Thank you very much. Enjoy the show. Welcome to today's episode of Bounded in a Nutshell. My guests are Maryann Plunkett and J.O. Sanders. After graduating from University of New Hampshire, Maryann was one of the founding members of the Portland Stage Repertory Company. She took over the role of Dot in Sunday in the Park with George from Benedict Peters on Broadway, and later won a Tony Award for a portrayal of Sally Smith in Me and My Girl. Her other Broadway credits include A Man for All Seasons, The Crucible, St. Joan, A Little Hotel on the Side, and The Seagull. Maryann has appeared in numerous off-Broadway productions. She's part of the ensemble of actors in Richard Nelson's highly acclaimed collection of plays, The Gabriels, The Michaels, and The Apple Family Plays, with Maryann receiving a Drama Desk nomination for her portrayal of Barbara Apple. Her television credits include L.A. Law, one of the stars of that. Blair Underwood is going to be one of our guests later on in the series. Murder, She Wrote, Miami Vice, The Nick, and Manifest. Her films include Blue Valentine, True Story, The Squid and the Whale, Little Women, and her beautifully nuanced performance as Joanne Rogers in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, opposite one of my favorite people, Tom Hanks. J.O. Sanders, born in Austin, Texas, Jay attended SUNY Purchase before making his off-Broadway debut in Henry V at the Delacorte. This was to be the beginning of a run of shows at that venue that would make Jay the actor with the most appearances on the Delacorte stage. I don't know if that still stands, but I think it might. His other off-Broadway credits include Midsummer Night's Dream, Hamlet, Twelfth Night, and the titular role in Titus Andronicus at the Public. Jay has also appeared in all of the Gabriel, Michael, and Apple plays, winning a special citation with the Drama Critics Circle for the Apple plays. In 2019, he won a Drama Desk Award for his portrayal of Uncle Vanya. On Broadway, he has appeared in Stuff Happens, Loose Ends, The Caine Mutiny Court Martial, St. Joan, and Pygmalion. Jay debuted his first play, Unexpected Interior, about the Rwandan genocide in 2015 at the Arts Performing Center in Washington. His numerous TV appearances include Crime Story, Person of Interest, True Detective, Sneaky Pete, Blind Spot, and The Sinner. His film roles include JFK, Day After Tomorrow, Green Lantern, Glory, Revolutionary Road, and my wife's favorite, Angels in the Outfield. It is a pleasure to welcome two national treasures like yourselves. Welcome, guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. I know, first of all, I guess we should, let's start at the beginning. We'll come back to the incredible phenomenon that is your latest Apple Play installment, which was just stunning. I saw it on Sunday. Congratulations on that. But let's start at the beginning. Maryann, was it always going to be acting, singing?
I think it probably was destined to always be acting, but I think when I was growing up, I was not exposed to acting the way some people, certainly the way our son has been exposed to it. Yeah. I just knew, I was immensely shy, painfully shy. And my mom, I remember when I was about 8, brought me to see a production of The Red Shoes at a local college. And that was my first exposure to real theater.
Her mom, who was a big band trumpet soloist.
Wow.
Jazz.
Yeah. But, and that was my first awareness of this other world. And from then on, even before I knew it was a possibility, that was it was like, it's telling a story. I was always, I have a sister who's 5 years younger, 5.5 years younger than I, and I always told her stories and would make up things with the toys. So as I say, I think I was meant to be an actor without even knowing I was.
So when did the gears slip into actively pursuing it? Around when?
Really, you have the normal school shows.
Yeah.
You do a pageant, or you read you read a poem in class. My school was very big into literature and poetry. We had to recite and learn how to read a poem and make it a real thing. And then high school, and then I knew. It was probably high school that I really knew, oh, this is real. This is something. And I began to explore different actresses and, reading biographies and watching old movies.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Did you have, I know for me, I mean, we can open that up to Jay also. It's like, it's so weird when growing up in Lagos, Nigeria. I mean, I did school plays and stuff, but I do remember there's echoes of ghosts of early things I saw on TV that appear in my performances now. I feel it's almost like,
yes,
that I mean, I remember Burton and O'Toole in Beckett, and little moments that for some reason you remember as a kid that there's no reason you should, and then somewhere later on in life, you sort of use it. You were constantly
they inspire you. They become iconic images of what great storytelling is, right?
And you sort of find yourself doing it before you even know you're doing it in that sense,
Yeah.
So I remember on TV, I saw Mary Martin, in the old version, black and white, doing Peter Pan. And I thought that was astounding. But embarrassingly enough, I think what led me a lot was watching Bonanza. And, and I'm thinking, wow, and the cowboys and Joe and Hoss Cartwright. And I thought, I could be one of those people. There.
Well, that's incredible. What about you, Jay?
She came from a family in which there were people who tried their hand at arts and various things, but none of them were headed in that direction.
No.
In my family, all of us but my older brother headed into the arts.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that. Austin, Texas. I mean, was Austin the sort of liberal, sort of like artsy, bohemian sort of place it is now back then?
Well, yes and no. It was because it was such a college town, University of Texas, which is where my father went, and he was in the very first ever liberal arts class of University of Texas. Before then, it was always your regular study. You did this or you did that, and he did all sorts of things. He even studied storytelling and I forget what the name of it. It was like folk history, whatever, with a man named J. Frank Dobie, who was a great Texas storyteller at the time. My father was my father became a square dance caller and collected square dances and wrote historic pieces about the evolution of the square dance and all. But he loved Texas beyond, and he loved his parents, but he was not of their realm. He was E.T. there. He was deeply involved in the civil rights movement, became a pacifist. Early in college, became a Quaker. It was a lifelong Quaker, which is how I was raised. He was, again, before the United States got into the war or anything, he was very much a pacifist and became a conscientious objector and served during World War II, but it was in civilian public service camps, mostly with Amish and Mennonite and other Quakers. He was a fish out of water, and he proudly wore it. He, as a young man, he was in charge of the American Friends Service Committee wing in Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas, which is, oh my God. He and my mom founded the first ever integrated daycare center.
Wow.
In Austin. And at the time, it was front page headline of the Austin American-Statesman, and not in a good way.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
So it was a very different, you're saying it was a very different Austin.
Well, it was different. I think the roots of those people, there were those people there always, but it was very much at odds with itself. It was still Texas. And 50
So how
years
did he
later,
with
when
the-
my mother was in the hospital sick, a young woman reporter flew up to interview her because she was now seen as a hero for
Right.
having done this back then in retrospect. And my older brother had been one of the first members of this class. Anyway, so we go way back in social activism along with the arts. They were both artists, and my mother was a chorus conductor, and anyway, on and on.
So were they? So I'm guessing you know, Maryann, big band. Your mom, trumpeter. Did you say in a big band?
Yeah.
You know, your father with his liberal arts leaning. So it was an encouraging environment. You pursued your theater love.
Me more
Yeah.
than Maryann. They didn't
Yes.
understand
No,
it in her family.
yeah.
It wasn't that they discouraged it. It's
Well,
they didn't
just,
didn't get it as
well,
a.
when I wanted, through high school, it was
Uh-huh.
exciting. And, you know, we would go the high school competitions and
Yeah.
things. But once I said, this is what I would like to study in school, then there was absolutely not.
My daughter, the whore.
Yeah, you know, it was,
Oh,
and
God.
it was
You know,
just through,
that was their understanding,
you know,
or
Irish,
misunderstanding
well,
of what it
Irish
meant.
Catholic, patriarchal, and he came, you know, from my family, a lot of it was about survival. You know, my
Yes.
dad was from a huge family of 8 children, and only 3 survived to adulthood. And he was, you know, the poorest of poor. And
Right.
his dad worked in the mills in Lowell. His mom was a cleaning woman. And my grandfather would have brought my dad into the mills with him once he graduated from 8th grade, because my
Yeah.
grandfather never went beyond 4th grade. But my grandmother said, no, he's going to go to high school. Then he went through high school. My grandfather said, well, he's coming into the mills. Like, no, he's going to be a lawyer. And my dad did indeed become a lawyer, and eventually a state representative. And, you know, so it was about survival.
He was protective. It was like, how you going to make stay alive? How are you going to make money?
It's funny, that balance, because you have, you know, Jamie, your boy, who's just a lovely guy, who got quite lovely notices for A Curious Incident, right?
Really.
You know, I mean, how has, I know growing up, I mean, I used to act as a kid in Nigeria, but that's okay when you're in school and primary school and all that. But further on, it isn't. And, you know, I went on to the track with economics. And I remember being at Yale studying economics. And I remember when I got offered a scholarship to drama school, it took me a whole semester to tell my parents. And I was pretty certain, being of that, a bit like what you're talking about. There were 3 professions: a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, really.
Right, sure.
And I remember being terrified about telling them, and eventually telling them. And to this day, I have stored away the letter that, because that's what parents do. They surprise you, don't they? I think there's a point when parents, when they realize, wow, because I never knew what I wanted to do. In fact, coming to America and enjoying the liberal arts education was a chance to delay decision-making. So I think after the initial shock of acting, because no one in my family, there was no history at all of that, you know, but I think there was a realization at some point as parents, and I'm going to ask you about this, is at some point the love is in the letting go. At some point it's about how much can you do and how much you have to let them then live their life. I mean, how was that with Jamie? I mean, it's evident, it's in his blood. He's passionate about it, you know?
Yeah, he feels expectation even because he grew up in a house in which there was nothing but acting.
Yeah.
We had interest in other parts of life, but it was, in a way, it's a burden to say, well, what else am I supposed to be?
I mean, when he was born, I stepped back very far.
Yes.
You know, we had been wanting a child since we were together, and he did not come easily. You know, he didn't come right away. And I had at that point a pretty full, wonderful career. I wasn't giving up on it, but I also knew I want to experience this as well.
Yeah.
This is it. You know, we've been blessed with this child, and it wasn't an easy thing. And so I began working in the schools. I began doing a lot of work with the children, and producing after 9/11 an arts science festival that is still running all these years later at the school.
It was a school that was a few blocks from the Trade Center,
where we were evacuated.
That,
but it taught me more. So he wasn't exposed only to, oh, you have to be an actor. In fact, there was a part of us, I think, that thought, oh man, it's such a tough profession. And he has other interests. But you do have to take a step back and say,
yes,
where is your path leading you?
Also, fortunately, we're fortunate that we have our investment is in someone who's growing up in this technological world who helps guide us forward and teaches us about all the things that were out there that we otherwise would no idea of.
There are so many
He
platforms
teaches us every time he sees us. It's a tutorial on dad. Now, okay, here, okay, listen. This is what. I've learned to shut up more and more and go, okay, and then what is there? But he's magic.
No, he's
a voice in the darkness in a whole different world.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that. I mean, I'll start with Jay. I think I probably saw you in something before, but going back, I'm trying to rack my mind before we actually met in person and worked together, was probably seeing you in JFK.
Right.
I can't not ask about that whole, compared to the world I know you in that we've worked in, is very much this intimate world that is the theater life. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That couldn't have been more Hollywood in the stars of it, the director of it, and all that stuff. Tell us a little bit about your transition, because a lot of the people watching, a lot of them are theater actors who want to make the leap to Hollywood or to TV. Now, I mean, it's a different ballgame now. TV is now the new golden standard, but
it's a huge issue, and we're just having the conversation today, even relative to the Apple, the Zoom piece that we did.
Yes.
What do we need to talk about? I did not, I got early opportunities to do film that came from people knowing me in theater. I started in the theater. I was always headed to the theater, and I figured something else would come as it would as a result of doing what I loved and what I believed in. I've never left the theater. When we were first together, it's interesting that she was doing a rep company on Broadway that Tony Randall had organized, the National Actors Theater, and I was treated as her film star husband. I always thought this was back right soon after. As a matter of fact, it was before just as JFK was about to come out.
Yes.
And then it came out that year, and I remember Tony Randall turning to me and going, "Oh, Jay, you're hot as a pistol." But it was very funny to me because I never thought of myself as a film actor. I thought of myself as a theater actor who got some film work. I just had a few in a row there. Mm-hmm. The lines are blurring, fortunately. Mm-hmm. I see it. I'm even more aware of it in the English theater because the stage tradition was so strong and you had such a separation that you had people who came forward and made, and they did things for large spaces. Yeah. That was their training. And gradually, as more and more of them did film and found out how to modulate and go back and forth, you saw their acting get better and better and better because they were in touch with a way of telling the truth in their acting that had never been required. It was available, but not required on the stage, or certainly not on large stages. So even people, I think Ian McKellen's a great example of that. Someone whose acting just got better and better as he went back and forth between film and theater. And it's true for all of us because you come in so intimately, someone watching you so closely, and then suddenly you're back out to a theater and in and out and in and out, and you know how it is. I
find that I demand a lot more on camera from my internal life. I demand a lot more because it sort of has to be constantly active because we don't have the gift of the language to tell people what our internal life is.
Well,
often in film. Do you know
I
what I mean?
find I more and more don't.
Yes.
More and more, and of course with this work with Richard.
Richard is so much.
And with the microphones over the stage.
Yes.
There's an intimacy, an overheard nature, a discovery that you know more than they know more about what you're saying than you're telling them.
Yes,
You're simply being there and thinking and feeling what you do and speaking as you do that. And the speaking becomes just one element of our acting.
Yes.
That it is.
Yes, and that there's just so much going on.
And even in denial of your emotions, they see so clearly, oh, that's not what he really thinks. So that's, or he's trying to avoid this, or, oh, he's feeling very deeply, so he's being jolly right now, but he's in pain.
Yeah. Letting people in with different aspects of your body, Maryann, because I'm thinking of, you somehow gravitate towards these roles when you do film and stuff like Little Women and stuff, where it requires, I don't know how to put this, because we all love film, we love all the mediums, but I think it allows you to exercise a lot of that complexity of your stage work in a lot of the film stuff I've seen you do. Do you know what I mean? Well, it's like you're not.
I think she carries it instinctively wherever she goes.
Well, and also film for me has been a process of getting to know and like, because I feel as though because even though people sometimes say to me, "You're shy. We didn't know you were shy." And I say to people, "You're always shy. You just learn how to deal with it and how to live with it. You don't let it rule you. Try not to let it rule you. You try to rule it." But still, it's something going on to, like, say, a guest shot on a television series that's been running a long time, and you go in. And it's always, oh my God, you're walking into a machine that's already going.
They know their characters,
and how do I?
And you're coming in fresh.
How do I find my place? And it made me. I go, I hate film. I hate camera work. It pays, so I'm grateful for it. But oh God, I hate it. Or you could do a film and you have a tiny part, or one scene, even if it's a lovely scene, you're not part of the machine. Everybody knows everyone else. And for me, it was always excruciatingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm starting to find just Little Women and Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Yeah.
They both, the sets and you have to look at the director.
Yes.
The director welcomes you.
Yes.
And treats you as though you are a valued part of this community, even if you're there for one day or one scene. Mm-hmm. Everything follows. The crew treats that way, and it's not to treat you like you're something like a goddess, but just that you are part of this group. And I had, over the past couple of years, I've experienced that more and more. I've been doing a recurring role on a series called Manifest, and when I did my final episode of that, I actually said to the guy who plays my son, I feel like I'm part of a company. And I said, that's what I have always wanted. Theater always provided that you all start on page one, you start with a script, no matter what size your part is, you're always there. Every person has to be there every night. Every person shows up for the curtain call.
And you listen to other people acting even when you're not on.
Listen, you're part of the group, the community. And that's what I've always felt lacking or missed.
Continuity.
Yes, I find guest starring one of the most difficult things in this whole craft we do, like stepping in, because often also as a guest star, the spotlight, you're usually that episode you guest star and you're probably the most interesting thing in that episode, but you don't have the foundations everyone else has, which is knowing the world, knowing the people and stuff. So it's just like, hey, boom, act, be brilliant.
Well, you were asking about in reference to JFK. There's an interesting piece there. Because I worked with a number of actors who I knew from the theater, and there were some who were very much from the film. It was a huge, people like Tommy Lee Jones, who I revere deeply, and Kevin Costner, who had a lot of experience and had just come from winning 12 Academy Awards on our first day of rehearsal for JFK. Usual that you have but we had a couple of weeks of rehearsal. And when through the making of the thing, they put off the final speech in that, which was the big summation in the courtroom. they waited till the end of the shooting towards the end of the shooting to do that. And Kevin was actually at home regularly going through the speech, and as Oliver would rewrite it and redo it, which he did, and he worked at it like a theater actor to be familiar with it. When he came in and he did all this, he went, oh, wow, you know, somebody talking on a whole long speech is so unusual. So much of what I had to do was reactive in those cases, in with a group, finding out exactly where we were going to be relative to each other and what was happening in the moment. And you know, you'd have days of lines where people were walking and talking and be prepared, but it was, every day was about, what are we doing now? What is this now?
Yeah.
Whereas I noticed that, for example, this is what I met Gary Oldman. I had actually met him at the Royal Court years.
One of my favorite actors on the planet.
Well, he and Brian Cox had been doing Rat in the Skull upstairs downstairs rather, at the Royal Court.
Right.
I was doing a play called Abel's Sister upstairs there back in 4. But we really spent a lot of time together on JFK. And he was one of the only guys I know who would go back to his room and just spend hours in his room alone, walking around, listening to tapes of Oswald speak. And he had that way of talking that was, he loves to go in with his terrific ear and find his way in that way. But that's very unusual for film.
Right.
Preparation is very unusual for.
Yes. I mean, we had John Lithgow on yesterday, and he was saying how someone asked a question about, you know, he played the villain in Cliffhanger, that massive blockbuster, and how up until 3 days before they started shooting, he was supposed to play another role. And then Chris Walken dropped out, and 3 days, he suddenly had to play the second biggest role in the whole thing, accent, life, character, find it. It's that sort of, it's almost like a magic trick on film and TV. It's almost expected to be sort of like a magic. Can we just
also because
do this accent, you know?
You're added in last.
Yeah.
Weird. You would think it would be you, and then everything would grow out from you. But so much in film, it's with the production and where are we going to do it, and how are we going to do it, and what are the sets going to be, and what are the schedules of people, and how do we do this, and who's the cinematographer, all that, and then you're like, oh yeah, we can get so and so to do it.
To do this.
As opposed to in theater, you start with that core group, and
then you figure everything
out
else
from there. Yeah, but that's which is one of the reasons that we all love theater so much.
I was going to say, don't you just love theater?
But now we have all this film and television happening here in New York.
And there's some wonderful television happening that's allowing for
definitely the golden age of.
Yes.
And we work with many other theater actors. There's so much more of theater and film actors, and less difference.
And more theater directors.
More theater directors, right? And playwrights writing for.
I love how much, when you watch a lot of TV shows, regardless of where they're set, how often you recognize New York theater actors in these roles now, and it's almost like a throwback. One of my favorite shows was, I love almost every year, at least once a year, I'll watch Columbo. And it's incredible that although it was set in LA, every character actor in it spoke with a Brooklyn accent. Like they were shipping all the New York actors into the role. It cracks me up.
Oh, that's right. You know, the joke of Law and Order of somebody in Canada, they watch so much Law and Order that when I've gone up to work there, the number of people who come up and say, "Oh, hey, you're that guy from Law and Order. You're the guy from Law and Order." And I go, I'm a New York actor. We're all the guy from Law and Order. You know?
Can I ask you about one of the questions I asked? I'm hasty, but I guess the more episodes we do, it is because there are certain questions that reemerge. We look at Maryann Plunkett and we look at Jay Sanders, and we're like, they've made it. They're huge. They're part of the tapestry of New York theater and work. But you know, that's as I phrase it, the pictures in the album. Albums only have the happy pictures, you know? So I mean, there's the gaps in between. There's the spaces that lead you, the stuff you have to go through to have that happy picture. Sure. Tell us, can each of you share experiences of when the work wasn't there, or the disappointment set in, how you fortified yourself to keep going, because it's never a straight road, is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have to say, I believe, and maybe Maryann will see it differently. Please correct me. But I believe that the two of us, first off, that we found each other was amazing.
A man called Hawk on set.
A man called Hawk. That's right. Our first kiss on film.
Kiss is on
1989.
Yeah.
But we recognized something in each other from early on, and it proved out over the years. But we both have an appetite, a curiosity, an appetite, a love of literature, and a desire, I wouldn't say it's even a need, a just desire to keep creating things, to keep being busy, to keep challenging ourselves. We work together whenever we can, but there are lots of times when we're doing separate things and crossing and meeting for dinner, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a personality that's in here, and I've told Jamie this many times because he went through many bizarre levels of rejection on things that he had auditioned for in college.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood why someone, you know, you'd look, I go, why wouldn't you cast him in this? Or why would you?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not there. So, but his first reaction after a series of disappointments, I'd call him to say, James, how you doing, man? You okay? And he'd go, Dad, I have an idea. And I go, that's it. You say, you made it. That's it.
Yeah.
It is the resilience that is going to be your constant partner. And I'm lucky that I have resilience in my literal partner, but I also have resilience in me. And as both of us have it, it feeds us both. And allows us, if one of us is feeling a little let down for some reason, you can sink a little because the other one goes, no. There's this great idea for, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not everyone has that reflex.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are have a harder time getting up off the mat, and that's just depends on where you come from.
And we have had great good fortune in being able to. It's even if it's back and forth, or you have enough film work in order to support you for when you're going for theater, and then even if you don't get it. And you know, I even feeling like I'm a senior member of this community in New York now, and I've been here a very long time. Done a lot.
We're senior.
And we are senior members. We have to qualify. Yikes.
We realized recently that we've become revered.
But you know, it's funny that so you sort of think that so there are certain things that you'll be that you're beyond now, but even just say doing a workshop for some, there was a particular piece that I did a workshop for about a year ago, and you know, and felt really strong about it, and thought, and everyone was like, oh my God, you were so great, including the creators. And then it came around again recently to be produced, and I hadn't even gotten like an inquiry of.
Jessica Hecht had a similar story. Yeah, we'll keep going. Yeah.
You know, and you just, there's a part of you that feels, wow, were they wow, that they didn't even ask if I was available or send something going, you know, we loved you so much, but we decided we want someone to talk, whatever. It was just that feeling. We've asked Jay to do it. Sorry. But you'll still get a paycheck. You can split it. But, you know, and I was amazed for myself of how that still stung, you know, and it didn't matter of, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to put food on the table.
No, it's not that. No.
The emotional thing about having invested my soul for this week to 10 days.
I gave you something real that mattered to me.
And with all the,
it's not a business. It's not just business.
Well, this business sometimes also has so much, oh, darling, or this, or brilliant, or that, and that you're sort of covered with it. And my, you know, New England Irish Catholic, it's like I can do without this. I want this. I want you to look me in the eye and just acknowledge me.
It's like my.
You know,
I'm not going to
right.
wear a mask.
Don't even bring Mike Pence into this conversation. Let's throw that one out. But but it's you know, it's and I think we all experience that no matter where we are. Yeah. You know, I mean, maybe if you're super uber stardom, but even being a senior member of a community, you realize, wow, I'm still just, if they don't want, I'm just thrown away. You know,
Yeah.
it's like without acknowledgement.
Yeah.
We also
So-
both spend a lot of time with younger actors.
Mhm.
Maryann's done a lot of coaching.
Mhm.
I've done some, and I've done a lot of masterclass stuff down at SUNY Purchase. Like I just did yesterday, I did 5
Mhm.
hours online with them. The need to talk to them about our experience, the need to talk
Yes.
about what it was that made a difference. Boy, what I wish I'd known back then that could, you know, that I'm still aware of now, that if I could have had somebody, you know, put in my
totally
ear
agree
that
with you,
don't
because
forget
one of
this.
the mistakes I made in my 20s and certainly into my 30s and whatever was this idea that I am an actor. That is all I am. Everything about defining myself sort of evolves, whether consciously or subconsciously, around someone saying yes after I go and audition in what is probably the most subjective setting there is.
Yeah.
You know, period. And
Yeah.
creating, which is part of the reason why I did launch this series and why I asked these sort of questions. I think it's very important for people, regardless of the stage of their career, to understand that it's just never a straight line. And resilience, words have come up already: fortune, resilience, luck, phrases, picking yourself up. It's not, they're not cliches. They're just, they're part of the whole thing. And
we're also
we're
also in a business where, you know, people, someone like Robert Duvall, or some of these guys who got started acting later in their lives, who, you know, I was a truck driver and I was this and that. I tried other things, I came to it, or I did something else to enable myself so that I would have enough money to eat, so that I could then do this, do classes at night or do something at night. There are all those different versions. And it's so important to tell people, you do have to live, obviously. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be safe.
Yes.
You know, we came out of college in a time of AIDS, a whole other plague, and we lost all sorts of friends to that. And the reminder that if you're not safe, if you don't take care of yourself and each other, you're not going to be here to do anything. But then the question of, okay, I'm offered two things. One's money and one's heart. And the heart's not paying much. And I said, we both come from a background of saying, I always choose the heart, with the understanding that the money will somehow follow. Sometimes it means you got to scrape a little. Sometimes it means you've got to look a little harder. Sometimes it means you have to take the next thing with a little more eye to money, but that it's always an eye towards what is it that fills me, that keeps me doing this for the reason I want to do it. Because if you take away the heart, if you got into this business to make money, you're an idiot.
Yeah, they're much easier ways to make money.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. And I'd love to now move on to, because we're going to come around to speaking specifically about your relationship with Richard Nelson and the work you've done with him. And but before that, Shakespeare, I have to throw it in at some point. Numerous roles at the Delacorte. What is it about him? What is it about doing the Bard that I mean, all our longest conversations have been about him, Jay. Do you know what I mean? And I believe the first time we met was an evening reading of The Tempest that Michael Sexton had organized for Shakespeare Society.
There were various scenes intercut with ballet.
Yes, exactly, and stuff. And we got to talking straight away, and it was immediately and when you find other people, it's like this geek fest, isn't it?
I just said this yesterday. I said that I always love the phrase, we don't make friends, we recognize them.
We recognize them. I love that. Can you tell me, have you guys done Shakespeare? Have you done? I know one of your passions.
Yeah, we've been trying to do it. But we had a production of Macbeth. We were trying to do older.
Done. Yes.
With us.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we did that week-long workshop.
We did the workshop of Macbeth. Is that? I mean, have you done other Shakespeare plays together?
She's never done. She's done lots of Shakespeare, but she hasn't done Shakespeare at the Delacorte with the public.
Right.
And I keep saying, oh my God,
Yeah, that's one of those strange moments where you just go, I don't know. I see these people who've never spoken Shakespeare before, and they're doing it, and it's like I've done so much of it, and I know I'm good at it, and it's just it's like you just breathe, you know. You go, it'll happen when
I would love to.
You can't.
I would love to. I would love to do. I would love to do that production. I mean, I'd love to do that production with you and her, and even with that group that we had. I just thought that was magical, you know.
Yes,
And I'm actually, during the pandemic, I didn't mention this to you before, but during the pandemic, I decided to start learning Lear.
Oh, wow.
So I've been the past month and a half, I've been working on Lear, but
you've done
Kent for so long, and having done Kent with you, you know, it's the great vantage point from which to look at and consider that role.
Yes.
But that's an example of, I keep myself full of what it is I love, and you know, people interrupt me for things like, you know, like my friend Chuck wanted me to do an interview.
Yeah.
but you know, there's so much to do, and I keep going. I wish I had
I think that idea of, sorry, Maryann, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, it's fun because my very first introduction to Shakespeare, without even, when I say I didn't know certain things, or I would be drawn to something but I didn't know it was my mother had she must have studied it in high school. It was probably assigned to them, and it was a volume maybe like this big by this big, and it was of Macbeth, and it was just a little volume, and I found it in a bookcase. I was sneaking. I'm one of 5 children. Everyone else was in the other part of the house, and I'm down where it wasn't supposed to be in my mom's room, and looking through books, and I saw this little tiny volume, and I didn't know what it was, and I opened it, and it was like in the first words, and I just said witches. So it was also, I completely freaked out. And I remember, but that was my very first even awareness of the words of Shakespeare.
Wow.
I was maybe 8 years old.
And that play, of all plays, you know, there are certain of the plays that stand out as peaks of his brilliance in poetry. And Macbeth, there's sometimes when I go, you know, I really want to tell that other story, but I really want to do this language. You know, you want to do the Tempest for those, you know, some of those brilliant places, but I want to make those speeches so they don't feel like speeches.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where it's just that brilliance floating out of you. And he's just so deep and so insightful, and you keep, every time you approach him or reapproach him, you know more, and you're better able to relax and let it flow. I mean, that's where it all comes from. It uses all sides of you. It takes you places where you go, you know, that Romeo can be so deep.
Absolutely. It's funny because over the course of the series, different people have been stepping in, and given that, you know, Kristen Linklater spoke about Shakespeare, then John Lithgow, then Jessica, and you know, you're formulating this wild tapestry. And then I got an interesting message from one of the students that was watching yesterday, because at the end of the interview with John Lithgow yesterday, John suggested that we read Act 2, Scene 4, you know, Serpent's Tooth from Lear, and I played all the parts, and he read Lear, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. But I got a question from one of the students that I said, it's sometimes when you have acting styles, and I picked out of the blue, I say, for instance, Meisner, you know, that leads with the emotion a lot of times. And I said, there's something about Shakespeare that if you lead with anything, whether it's emotion or intellect, or if you lead with anything and then do the other stuff, you're done. You know what I mean? It doesn't.
Right, it's all at once.
It doesn't work. It can't.
It's like you open the floodgates and everything comes forward.
Everything sort of has to come out at the same time. You
guys
have spoken about poetry. Maryann, you spoke about reading the words, the imagination, seeing the word witches, man. All that stuff sort of has to simultaneously work at the same time, and then do it on the line. You know what I mean? It's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, you know, when I was in college and a professor in the English department And he was a big he thought he was best friends with Shakespeare. He
Don't
lived.
they all?
May have been.
Yeah, he
May have
lived.
been. He was a very old guy.
The books he had written, it was as though, like, oh, I was crossing the bridge in Stratford and I saw him, type of feeling. I mean, he didn't say those exact things, but that you felt, oh yeah, he met up with him for coffee or something. But he was teaching a class in the English department. No, this is Robert Hapgood. And he, Bachelor was in the theater department. And his English literature, his English students, that's what they were studying. And this was their Shakespeare thing. And he was frustrated because he said, it's so intellectual. They're looking at it, they're analyzing this and the meter and the form and the words and the structure. And he came to the theater department and he said, I need to find 2 actors that I can bring in so that as we are discussing this from an intellectual English literature point of view, they can demonstrate acting the scenes. Right. And so I had a job senior year going in and doing that, where we would perform and with a male actor, and we would perform scenes, in a simple way, but just to bring the human, because Dr. Hapgood,
blow life. It's like the end of Winter's Tale, bringing that statue
and all the
life.
intellects in the class were very, whoa, wait a minute. It's human. The language isn't even, it's not even elevated. It's human.
No.
Because we,
all those
as humans,
words,
our feelings are full. And maybe
someone put it very well yesterday. I think Lily Ray, put it well. And I've heard that before, but it was really great to hear her say that finally someone was giving the words to me to help me express things that I couldn't.
Yeah.
So he's actually more human than human in many ways, and I think that's what people, by the time and there are not, I don't use the word rules, I use the word suggestions, and I think Kristen used that, maybe I read it in her book saying use that word instead. You do have to learn that stuff because it helps you navigate it, but it's not constraining you, it's opening it up for you to be more human than human in that way. And people often forget that because, I think after the Bible, it's the most written of subject on the planet. More books are published about Shakespeare than any, second just to the Bible. Do you know what I mean? And I find that
I spend many hours privately making Shakespeare conversational to myself, making it so personal to myself that it flows out, but I have to do it enough times over that I know it so well that it's unconscious, and he just takes you places. He takes you into deeper and deeper thoughts.
I love the thing you said about reading. That's another thing, and I think that ties into imagination for a lot of people watching who have their dream roles in a business where we don't control everything. In fact, the majority of it we don't control. It is important to keep yourself alive and ready. Like you say, you're reading Leia for God knows what production may or may not happen down the road. One of I remember when I met, I think I might have mentioned on the series already, is when I was filming Leia with Anthony Hopkins and stuff, and we were chatting about Shakespeare in general. And he said, oh, you did Hamlet? And I said, yes. And then he started the speech of To Be or Not to Be. So I joined in because I just played him. You know what I mean? And to be or not to be, that is the question. And I was saying by the 10th or so line, 10th or 11th line, he was already like 2 beats ahead of me with the alacrity or speed of it, and clarity. And I said to him, I didn't know you played Hamlet. And he said, I haven't, but I read it because I love it. I just read it. You know what I mean? And we forget. That's where that's where you form your dreams. And that's where you apart from getting ready for, if that part ever gets offered to you, there's something about, if you want to do it, for Christ's sake, read it. Don't just dream about it. There's a practical side to dreams also.
Right.
Yes.
There's a practical side. And I think reading and preparing, you sort of send that message out there. And if it does come along, you're ready, I remember after doing my first ever Shakespeare at Yale undergrad, I did Othello, funny enough. And I then picked up a copy of Hamlet, and I remember a friend of mine was on spring break or something somewhere. She goes, "Are you about to do Hamlet?" I said, "No, but I'm going to." And I just remember that. And that's going back, you know, I think it was about 15 years between that and when I actually did play the thing, or 16 years, more than that, you know?
Chuck, you know, I have something like that with Macbeth.
Yeah.
I had played Macduff years ago, which I actually loved. But I said, I really want to do this role. And then it didn't come around, and it didn't come around. And I finally, on my 50th birthday, leading up to my 50th birthday, I decided I was going off to do a film shooting in Vancouver. I was by myself, and the whole 3-hour time difference and staying in touch with Maryann and Jamie and everything. And I decided to give myself that role for my birthday.
That's great.
So I sat, and on the set, I would read and look at and take apart and put together and speak and just to myself. And that's what I did in all my downtime. I would go to museums and look at things. There's an incredible anthropological place there with all these totem poles and masks and everything, transformational characters, which all has since related very much to Macbeth for me. But everything became about in relative to that world of that play.
Yes.
All the other actors would come over and go, "Oh, are you working on that?" I go, "Yeah." Where are you doing it? I go, "I don't know."
I don't know.
And then I came back from doing that film and got a call completely out of the blue saying, they're wondering, they've lost an actor in the title role. They're doing a production of Macbeth in Boston on Boston Common. They're Shakespeare in a Park. The whole thing is cast. And would you step into this role? And I was like, oh my God. I thought, you know, maybe there were like 3 old women in Vancouver going, "You will play this." No, but I loved that. I kept telling that story to people. And
I think that's a great story. I hope you tell that to your students when you work with them, you know. Do you have a dream? I mean, apart from Lady M, Maryann, do you have any other dream Shakespeare roles you'd like to play? Because I know Jay's, we talk about it all the time, you know.
Yeah. You know, there are some that I think, you know, would be off the path type of things. I go, oh yeah, I could play that too. But no.
She just talked about
male or female.
Talked about Gloucester today.
I thought about Gloucester. But you know, I've been lucky. I mean, I got to play Helena in Oswald That Ends Well, and you know, to tie Juliet. Yeah. Someday, I mean, we're getting a little long, but I'd love to spar with him as Beatrice and Benedict. I would love to.
That's great. Yes.
Because
That
even
would be
if it's
wonderful.
just for a, you know, a presentation or something, not in the play, because we are getting the other side. Although
I'd have a hard time pretending I didn't love her.
No, I just want to watch Jay clamber up vines and stuff.
Yes.
That's what I
do. It. Come on, man, I could do it.
But you know, so that's the nice thing about it, though, too, is that you realize. In fact, I saw when I was very young. It was Claire Bloom. Claire Bloom did a presentation. It was some women, Shakespeare's women,
it was a one-woman show about doing.
And she was, I don't know, you know, 60 or so. I mean, she's a very beautiful woman. But she was there just simply presented. And I remember one of the scenes she did was Juliet and the nurse. And she did both roles. And her Juliet was so alive. So I sat there thinking, I want to see her play Juliet right now. You know, even at age 60, I want to see her Juliet.
There's an essence and an at-homeness with that language.
She was so vital. And I think she might have done the, you know, the potion speech too on her own.
Yes.
She wasn't alternating between nurse and Juliet. There was one where it was just such stillness. I think it was probably the potion speech.
Yeah.
And I would pay money to see her play Juliet.
Play that. Yeah. So I it's funny because, you know, it used to be not about ageism at all. When you think of some of the great actors, when they were ready to play, maybe there's a bit of discussion, or isn't he a bit old to be Hamlet at 50 something, but then he turns up, knocks it out of the park, and no one's talking about that anymore. Do you know what I mean? I just find it really interesting that we've become more and more conscious of
when
casting.
that language, when you come to become one with that language, you lose sense of should have been or could have been. You become your cosmic self.
And
don't you?
strangely, I'm speaking of Macbeth. I never had any interest in Lady M because I found her. It's like I don't care about it. She's just evil. It's like that's boring.
Yeah.
And it's like and so often it's played many times, even when the Macbeth is older, when they have the young sex goddess,
The trophy wife.
You can just tell they're waiting to do sex me. You're like, okay.
And also it becomes, and I would always think, well, that diminishes him as who he is,
as who he would choose to be with.
Finally,
my dearest partner in greatness.
My dearest partner in greatness, and only when I got older did I, because I liked the play, and I would look at, and suddenly there was one day in my growing older where I suddenly went, oh my God, I know who she is. I know what drives her. And it's almost like, you don't walk away from me.
Yeah.
Her whole essence of being, she's disappearing, her status, her as anything, she's no longer a mother. She can't create another child. She can't. You don't walk away from it.
Age is taking this away from her, and she's grabbing it back.
And it's not something that she's just like, oh, I'm so evil. It's not a Disney.
It's not a Disney villain.
And not to say everybody plays it that way, but I just didn't. My being didn't get that, but as an aging woman, I get it.
Yeah. And I think there's something about revisiting these roles as you get older, you bring on. I'm really grateful that, unlike my ego-driven self, I didn't play Hamlet at 20, that I played him 20 years later, actually, because you bring a lot of stuff.
Or that you play it, or you play it both times. I mean, you play it.
Yeah, if you're lucky enough.
Well,
we must move on. Sorry.
Sybil Thorndike said, I believe, said in terms of talking about St. Joan, saying, no, one is never too old to play St. Joan, my dear. One is only too young.
That's great. Can I ask you specifically, before we open up to questions from your adoring audience, Richard Nelson, your relationship to him? I mean, that's become, I was saying everyone sort of needs fairy godmother, fairy godfather, someone to grab you at some point in your career and start just opening up aspects of yourself, working with them. Tell us a little bit about your, relationship with him and the play, developing these amazing characters with him.
I started this off. My first year out of Purchase, I went to Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. I was looking for a company. I was looking for somewhere that I could grow and develop who I was as a young actor. And I'd been playing old men in college, Willie Loman and Galileo and the Marquis de Sade, and all of which were fantastic and brilliant. But I thought, now I would have to get back to being the young guy. And they brought me down on the pretense of doing a certain season that included playing Happy Loman, which I thought was perfect because he's the young Willie in that family, in a production that they had already done and taken to Russia, and of playing Billy in Streamers, which is, I think, one of the great roles of modern theater and great plays. David Rabe's piece, Lily's Day.
Yeah, Lily Rabe's Day, yes.
And I had seen that here at Lincoln Center when I was just coming into town as I was about to start work on my first Shakespeare in the Park. And I thought, oh my God, to play those two roles, and we were going to tour them to Czechoslovakia. Well, I got down with this season in mind and was told there'd been a change, that someone in the State Department had decided that this was too negative a view, an image of United States to take overseas. All right. So they'd canceled the whole thing. So they're no longer doing Salesman because that was just being put up, remounted for the tour. And now but they would do Streamers. I went, damn, okay. All right, well, we'll do that. And we got there and we got to that moment, and I thought it was, I had come down to do this. And I was told, well, actually the director doesn't know you. So he'd like you, if you don't mind, he'd like you to read for it. Well, I went, all right. And my ego is thinking, well, I thought you brought me down here to do this special piece. And I auditioned for him and I didn't get the role. A friend of mine, Terry O'Quinn, who became a friend of mine, who's a wonderful actor, and he was wonderful in the role. And I ended up doing special makeup for the thing. But I was kicked, as they say, downstairs to the new play development area, where I played in a not successfully done play called Singers, which was sort of an Equus redo with a rock star instead of the boy who blinded the horses. You know, so it was a two-person thing with a psychologist and that. And I did that. And, okay. And then I was put together in a one-man play called Scooping. It was a very early play by a young writer named Richard Nelson. And it was all made up of phrases. I'm actually, yes, enjoying myself this year, the attention I'm enjoying, all this interest in me and me. It's a real treat, a real change, and not as good as a turn of events being pinpointed, spotted, name and print, caps, to finally be a part after being such a scoop, Bubba. Scoop. That's how the play opens, and it's still,
wow.
You hear, I learned it while I was swimming. So it's never left my head, and I torment him with that every once in a while if he gets uppity with me. So but we remained close friends for decades, but I never worked with him again as an actor. I don't know why. I attended openings of plays of his in London at the RSC. I would go any and everywhere to see him. I would visit him. I used to spend New Year's Eves with him in his place in Brooklyn. And then when he moved to Rhinebeck, I would go up to, but we never worked together. And Maryann comes along. He falls in love with Maryann. He used her 4 times in a row. And finally, I still remember where we were sitting in the oak tree, the bar restaurant there at Vassar. And I turned to him, he and Cindy and Maryann and I were sitting there, and a bunch of other cast people. And I said, "Hey, Richard." He went, "Yeah." I said, "Did I kill your mother or something?" And he laughs like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "We've known each other all these years. We've never worked on anything again, but obviously we're very fond of each other, and we love each other's work, and we go, what's going on?" And he laughed at me. He didn't answer. He just laughed. 2 weeks later, he called me and asked me to do the first reading of the first Apple play, which we already knew he had written with Maryann in mind. So we knew she was doing it. And I went, okay. And we've never stopped running together since.
And what an amazing collaboration it's been. What is it, before we open up, because I saw, like I said, I saw What Do We Need to Talk About? Did I say the title right? Yeah. And it was absolutely, the natural, which is, trademark of Richard, but you guys have ushered in a new way of telling stories, because it was a conversation, a conversation like we're having here. And it was just wonderful that one thing I find about it is that I don't know where the dramatic, and it's a good thing, I never know where the dramatic peak is in his productions. Even when I think of the Vanya you did, that you just get washed by constant realism, and that you've been part of an event and then the event ends. And I think there's something very brave about that kind of storytelling. Can you tell us what it is about Maryann and you, very quickly, why he works for you as a writer and director? Do you know what I mean?
Well, first, it's also company that you're part
yes,
of,
and the ensemble.
Part of his vision, and that you come in and you're all on the same page, and you're starting.
No one's alone. No one is alone up there.
He's very demanding. And his lines, which seem so real, as though we are making them up, are some of the hardest lines you could ever imagine having to learn.
They will often change tense
because
in the
they're
middle
so
of the
exact.
line.
But with that, the challenge of it, and he is, he's a combination of heart and mind.
Cerebral,
and that, and it's about letting go. That you go in, and it's not about I'm going to perform. It's about, say, listening.
Yes.
Talking and listening. As you respond and listen, which is all acting.
And
but
the need to talk, the need to communicate on everyone's
yes,
part.
Always before
center.
almost every single show, right before we say to each other, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you.
Say that
to all the
each
different
and
actors.
every
I need to
person,
talk to you.
And they say to you, and there
And
is a
going,
thing.
Yeah, I
It's
need
that
to talk to you.
What he talks about is the need to get back to the table. And the table represents that place where we are all facing each other and there together and with that common connective place. And that when he wrote this, he said, when he made this realization, he said, I realized this computer and this camera is the table.
Mm.
The Zoom platform.
We brought the same focus and uncomplicated communication, complex, but not, do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
The focus, communication, and desire to hear.
Yes.
We brought that to our computers, and it made it even more intimate because the audience was now sitting in the middle of the table.
They're part
seeing
of the
all
Zoom
of this
call,
coming,
really.
but they see everybody at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And they watch. If you have 4 squares, which we did, you're always watching most of the people listening.
Yes. Yeah.
So that becomes the focus of the piece is, how does this affect people? How do people avoid? What is moving you? What washes over your face?
And Richard also has a phrase as we're working on plays with longer period of time than 23 hours. But as we've been doing things.
That was 23 hours of rehearsal.
That he'll go, in rehearsal room of, I don't know. No, that sounds like a play. Well, what can we do?
Yeah. That sounds like a play. And you say, well, what do you want me to do? What do you think? He says, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I just know when it's wrong.
Let's try that. Yeah.
And that's how he directs. And the great thing about it is it's deeply respectful of who we are, because it doesn't guide us to how to do it. It simply guides us to our true natures. It guides us to our true speaking, our true voices, and true listening. And that's, he's a wonderful director, because there's no reading a line for you or telling you. He says, I'm not an actor, I can't do it, but I just know if it sounds wrong.
Sounds like a play. I love that phrase. That sounds like a play. Love it.
And guys, unresolved. You'd appreciate this, Chuck, that at the end of a speech or the end of a scene, one of his regular notes is, no, it sounds like a button. Yeah. It's not ended. Nothing's been resolved. We don't resolve things in these plays. We just continue the questions.
Yes.
So we're going somewhere, and that's why it feels like life.
Yeah.
Things don't get finished.
And most of his plays with the breath, or the movement from one scene to another, it's interrupting a scene. The breath is really interrupting a scene.
Yeah. I love the effect that was done actually with the zoom, with the sort of whoosh and coming back. Is that sort of thing of, we're going to leave that alone and come back. And speaking of leaving alone and coming back, we now have to move to my wonderful producer, Michelle, who has some questions for you guys from people that have been listening. Michelle?
Okay. Hey guys.
Hi, Michelle.
This question is from Carla. She says, can you speak to your early training and what tools you draw upon most often in preparing for a role?
I can interject something here, because I mean, Jay went to a conservatory. I always make a joke. I said, I always feel like I snuck in through the back door. That I said, I'm kind of scrappy. I went to University of New Hampshire, and I was lucky in the time I was there. I don't know what they're like now, but I had some superb teachers who prepared me for everything. But it's not a prestigious name. It's not a place to go, oh, you went to University of New Hampshire. It was what it was available to me. I paid per credit to classes until I acquired, but I was trained strangely, to listen, to be, in chamber theater, adaptations.
Funny that.
And, and that was my background, starting a theater company while I was still in school, paying per credit. And I didn't come out with, a showcase or being presented. Because we have this thing about what good luck, and I think I have been blessed with such good fortune in my life, synchronicity of being in the right place at the right time. I don't think that can be underestimated of how much good for someone who believes in you, someone who sees you.
And I agree with her, but I always say I think we also make our luck, and we also we see opportunities that we move forward to and give ourselves to. It's obviously a combination of those things. But she always loves to say that I went to a conservatory. I went to the very first year of SUNY at Purchase, in which it was all an experiment. So they didn't have a program set up. Everything was experimental. Everything was, we'll try this. Well, we'll get that person to talk to you. And they had some excellent people at the top of the program, Norris Houghton and Joseph Anthony, who brought in phenomenal people. You have Elia Kazan talking to you about his movies and sending his personal copies forward and stuff like that. Mildred Dunnick talking to you about the original Death of a Salesman, kind of, just amazing things. Joe had studied dance at one point with Martha Graham. There were people, there were just all these people, but I believe that it's really about access to as many people as possible with your curiosity turned on and your headlights full on them. And I did master classes yesterday with the recent graduating class from SUNY Purchase and the freshmen. And I talk to them differently, but it's related to the same thing. And I'm always telling the freshmen, get as much as you can from every single person who comes through there. Because even if they don't get you, and they won't, there are people whose chemistry is right. You don't smell right to each other, like a couple of dogs on the street. Some of them love each other and some of them hate. That's fine, but they're still there. They are there for a reason, and you are there for a reason. And you have to open yourself to get whatever you can from them, because years from now, you're not going to see them again, probably, but they're going to live in you if they had something there. And I believe that simply, my main teacher, Joe Anthony, would always say, what did you get? What did you hear? Now take it, and each one of you will use that or not differently. The trick is to collect as much as you can from all sides, and how it works for you or doesn't work for you is a personal thing. There's no right way. Maryann and I don't go, how are you going to approach this role? Oh, how are you going to, we just have our way. And I think with Richard,
I think it starts with sort of just reading over and over and over again what it is you are about to embark on.
Repetition is huge.
And letting it
living.
So you're not planning this, how I'm going to say it, but becoming more and more familiar. Just as Chuck, you were talking about with Hamlet, and Jay talked about, and now with Lear, of saying, yes, I'm learning this. I don't know when, but I'm going to do it. And I think that applies to when you are still doing it in a specific time. The more you can read it over and
you want to marinate yourself in it, so that by the time you come to doing it, it is partly or fully unconscious.
Yeah, it's funny. My first day of Hamlet,
I
didn't realize it, but my first day of Hamlet, I was actually off book, and I didn't actually know that I was till I was getting ready for the first day of rehearsal, and I was going through it. I was like, yeah, I know that one. So I spent the time learning the dialogue, not the speeches. Do you know what I mean? It's really weird. But anyway, next question from that. Thank you for that answer, Michelle. Go on.
Okay, this next question is from Dan. He says, I'd love to know how much of Jay's father went into his portrayal of Vanya, which I saw 4 times.
It's a good question. I would say he is in me deeply. His curiosity, his intelligence, his belief in humanity, his sadness for the world. I don't know that that's qualitative. You take yourself, and you are full of everything in you, everything in your life, and you take yourself fully into each role, hopefully. And in Richard's work, as much as, well, Richard's work in Shakespeare, it's all you walk in with everything that you are, and you cut away the parts that don't fit, and you accept in perhaps deeper elements or different elements that are needed until suddenly you're there. But I never thought about it as, oh, I see, Vanya does this, or I do that. I didn't think of it that way. I just kept walking that path and finding what I needed, and not going towards a goal. I walked the life of this man through this play until we got to where we got to. And I'm curious if he saw it 4 times or she saw it 4 times, that did you watch that change and evolve? Because each time I went out on stage, I found I was surprised by things that came out of me, and I was surprised by other people acting with me. And that surprise, that decision to allow yourself to be surprised, to seek out the surprise and the not knowing, is a really important part about true growth in a role. And certainly Vanya was the epitome of that for me.
It's interesting, that question about using things. I've mentioned before, I'm very wary of the idea of, oh, I see this as dad, or I see this as mom, or I see this as when so on. But inevitably probably was, because you're formed by all these things. You know what I mean? It was part of it, because there was definitely, there was, you know, when we see an aspect of you, Jay, like when I saw the play that I haven't seen before, it's coming from somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Sure. And I think, I don't know whether it helps to consciously say I'm channeling that, or to be present as Jay and know your life experiences and stuff will find their way into the performance. Does that make sense? Because I think it's very... Yeah.
I think of it as, I don't think of it as choosing, I think of it as allowing.
Yes.
Because when you allow, you're falling. It's like with singers who talk about singing backwards, singing back in and opening up. It's the same thing with acting, that you're letting go into feelings and thoughts and stuff that you haven't prepared, that you're not in control of. And all you're doing is, I just want to explain this. I want to make this clear. Is this clear to you? Mm-hmm. And you're looking at someone who's looking at you, and so you try to explain it more clearly. So my thought is, how do I explain this to you? Not how do I make these words sound like someone who is explaining to. It's not a portrayal of that. It is a living of that conversation.
A being of that conversation, exactly. Not a showing, a being
exactly.
of that.
Exactly.
Next question, Shep.
Okay, this one is from Jackie. I really liked your comment, Maryann, about the importance of a director in making you feel welcome on a set, especially if you're playing a guest role. Are there other qualities or behaviors you really appreciate from directors or fellow actors when working together? And in general, what makes someone a great artistic collaborator?
That's a simple question, isn't it? Oh, wow. You know, I think, again, being a shy person, it goes back to the human. I also, are we talking specifically of film? I'm assuming, since it started with that. I know Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Mari Heller, who is an actor herself, and wrote her own pieces when she was not getting work, and now has graduated into being really, I mean, I think, brilliant film director. She did How Can You Ever Forgive Me? Can You Ever Forgive Me? And with Melissa McCarthy, she directed that, which again, it's sort of a theater piece, if you think about it, the human. She, on set, she just embodied the human. Her little boy, who was 4 or so, he'd be on set sometimes, and sometimes he'd go cut, or, you know, action, he'd call out this little voice. And it reminds you that, yes, we're doing an important thing. We're making a movie, a big movie. This is whatever. It's human. We're telling a story. It's the same as if you're on film. We're telling a story. On Manifest, which I haven't even seen yet, but the directors on that and the producer on that. If it's a series, I think it's also dependent upon the producer, if the producer is human, making him or herself present, welcoming. It's a human to human. I think that what we experienced with Richard's play last week, the Zoom call, we go, well, this is actually film, if you think about it. I mean, we're doing a movie here, yet it's a play. It's the human.
It's all at once, telling the whole
about the
piece.
Interaction.
Right.
And I'm not sure if I answered the question, but that's what my answer is. I don't know.
Thank you.
Good.
Michelle?
This is from Falami. What is it like working so closely together? How does it affect your relationship and the roles you play within your personal relationship?
The roles we play within our personal
doing
relationship?
how to doing the roles we do together
all right.
affect being together.
Oh, being
personally.
together. Yeah.
It's hell.
Like, do you come home sometimes do you
It's
bring
just-
the work home with you sometimes or anything like
No,
that?
it's hell. It's hell. I'm having a hard time sitting here.
Yeah, I have his hand tied to the chair. This is where you go, we're so lucky.
We're so lucky,
And that, because that
We say
is
that
good fortune.
we say it
We're
at
so
some point
lucky.
every day.
Yeah, we're so lucky.
It's
That we met.
we found each
Yeah.
other. We love each other, and we're very different people. But we share a lot. The differences keep us excited in hanging out together. We make fun of each other because of our differences. And oh God, I know what you're gonna. Oh, yeah, all right, don't even say it.
But I think
that kind
help
of
each
stuff.
other because of our
and help.
differences
Right,
as well.
she's my best editor when I'm writing, when I'm thinking, when I'm doing something. She'll go, well, don't forget that. I'll go, oh yeah, right. Or you don't need to say that much. Oh, thank you. There's a lot of trust. And we explore things together through all of the work, but I think we do in our lives too. It spills over in a really healthy way. It's interesting that in all of the Nelson plays, we're never a couple.
No.
She's my sister, and then my sister-in-law, who's the widow of my brother just died, and Gabriel's, and then she's soon to marry my ex.
It's Michael.
Michaels,
and that's the first play in which Richard Nelson has let me be in love. It was so thrilling to be able to look across the room at Brenda and
yeah, exactly.
And she loves me. It's I've done things where I was not loved, but with Richard, but never. And of course, she's dying, but
I think this style of really being present is very helpful too, because it's not two people acting next to each other and portraying something and showing it's not. There's not a removal. It's two people being in the room together, and that's very easy for us because of our history.
I think we have a well-matched curiosity that we,
I would say so.
even if we go see a show or even reading something, a book, and going, I have a question. Do you think blah, 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 and there's no answer for it perhaps, but it's fun to just, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah,
A think mate.
Yeah.
Well, I just, as we close the show, and that was the perfect answer to close the show. There is part of my admiration about the two of you, apart from being phenomenal artists in yourself, is that relationship you have together. And it has, whether you know it or not, formed a very conscious roadmap for what I hope I achieve with my wife as we just got married and stuff. You two are very inspirational. Jamie's a beautiful kid. And it's been a joy having you on this show today. And people are going to be very excited about your masterclass next Friday. We can't wait to have you back. It's been a pleasure. Friday. I knew it would be a pleasure. So thanks for being here.
This Friday.
This Friday. I mean, this Friday.
This Friday. This Friday.
This Friday.
Chuck,
actually.
we love.
This Friday. Not
We
this
always
Friday.
love
This
spending
Friday.
time with you. We always love spending time with you, and I'm even if it's only on Zoom.
I have one question for you,
Yeah.
Chuck.
Yes.
Is your
Yeah.
family now proud of you? Very proud of you?
Oh,
What you're
do you know
doing?
what's funny? They were proud. They were proud from the moment I'm one of the lucky ones that even though it was a complete shift for them, they were proud from the start, you
Yes.
know, and I feel very lucky that if anything, it's been me trying to convince myself that they
Oh,
are
you
allowed to be
believe,
proud
right.
of me. They've
Right.
been there from the start of it. So I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. And
I
my
met your
only
family
regret
at
is
Lear.
that my mom, yeah,
I met your family
they
at
were there
Lear
at
when
Lear. They came over. My
Oh
dad
my
came over
God,
from
they were
Hamlet.
so proud.
My only regret is every time I do something that my mom isn't here in person, having passed away, to see it, because she was very much the champion. But I'm hoping she sees it somewhere, wherever
Yes.
she is. So thank you so much for being here tonight. I can't wait to see you guys on Friday. And Michelle, can you unmute everyone to just say their thanks to this, to these two, and pass on their thanks?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
listening.
Yay.
Thank you so much.